Chapter 466, Unconventional Methods. The flames blazing out from the ninja blade crashed down. Even though the opponent had already seen through his move, Deception was clearly very confident in his technique. The faster the seals, the faster the move came out. So what if the opponent knew? What could he do? A glint of cold light. Brief and rapid, a fleeting flash. The flames arrived at an empty spot on the earth. Lord Grimm, who had just been standing there, was nowhere to be seen. Deception tensed up. He immediately turned right and the flames followed along with him. From a straight chop to a horizontal slash, a wheel of flame whirled around Deception. The process sounds complicated, but it was very quick. If it wasn't quick, Flamecut's flames would have extinguished and it wouldn't have been possible for him to do so many movements. However, this slash still missed. As soon as Deception turned around, he saw Lord Grimm leap backwards, just barely dodging the Flamecut. Once the skill finished, the flames went out. The two didn't move. Chen Guo's chasing haze had finally arrived and saw the two staring off, neither side acting. She turned her head to look at Yi Shu and discovered that Yi Shu had an unprecedented look of concentration. This really was the first time she had seen Yi Shu like this. Ever since they had met, he had always played Glory in a casual manner. But today, was this scrap picker actually giving him this much pressure? Chen Guo remembered that even when he fought against Huang Shaoshan, Yi Shu hadn't been this serious. Chen Guo didn't dare say anything. Chasing Haze stood on one side, quietly observing the two of them. If I didn't have so much stuff on me, you wouldn't have been able to dodge, Deception suddenly spoke. His voice sounded very stiff as if he weren't good at speaking. If I hadn't known you had this much stuff on you, I wouldn't have done what I did, Yi Shu laughed. There's no point talking any further, Deception suddenly said and then quickly slashed again with his blade. This time, he didn't use any skill, just a normal attack. Yi Shu had prepared for this long ago. He immediately had Lord Grimm dodge and also swung his word. He also didn't use a skill, just a normal attack. In an instant, the two blades met. As if they had a tacit understanding with each other, the two only used normal attacks. Normal attacks didn't have any cool visual effects, but their movements were extremely quick and their characters looked as if they were just a blur in a storm of sword light. Chen Guo was shocked. This was her first time seeing such a fight. Not only were their blades quick, but their pathing was quick and the two constantly switched positions. Luckily, the equipment on the two characters were completely different. If not, Chen Guo wouldn't have been able to tell who was who. Deception's equipment was gray and ragged. They clearly weren't high-grade equipment. Speaking of this, very few scrap pickers wore their best equipment when scrap picking. This type of activity was extremely risky and ended 90% of the time in death. Wearing a set of top equipment might increase your survivability a bit, but if you died, then it would be a disaster. However, even if Deception's equipment weren't top quality, they were still a set. As for Yi Shu's Lord Grimm, Chen Guo wanted to cry. His character was also a blur, but Lord Grimm was like a rainbow. He was so colorful, it made people want to vomit. He didn't look imposing at all. He might look weaker, but Chen Guo was very confident in Yi Shu's skill. However, the two were moving too quickly. Chen Guo wasn't able to see what the situation was. But because of where she was located, she could simply look at Yi Shu's screen. By taking Lord Grimm's health and comparing it to Deception's health, wouldn't that be an accurate indicator of who was winning? But after watching for a while, she realized that their health bars were decreasing extremely slowly. This meant that despite their intense fighting, the amount of damage they each dealt was very limited because both sides had difficulty hitting their opponent. Moreover, as they fought, they moved towards a certain direction. It had only been a short while, but there was already a gap widening between Chen Guo and them. She wanted to help, but with how they were fighting, she didn't know how to help. Hey, do you need help? Chen Guo couldn't help but ask. These words were like a turning point. The two blurs suddenly split apart. Deception quickly turned around. His two hands formed a seal in front of his forehead. His hands moved in a blur. In any case, Chen Guo didn't have the skill to figure out what type of skill Deception was going to use next. Deception quickly finished the hand seal and slashed out. This time, the ninja blade was no longer a flame, but flowing water. As soon as the ninja blade came out from the sheath, it split into multiple streams, sweeping towards Lord Grimm. At this point, Chen Guo recognized the skill. This was another ninja skill, 100 streams. Just like the name implied, this was actually a crowd control skill with low damage. The streams chased after Lord Grimm and lifted him up. As they rose, they formed a water prison with Lord Grimm locked inside. Chen Guo instantly understood. The two weren't actually fighting. Deception had wanted to run away, but Yi Shu was stopping him. Now that he found an opportunity, he unleashed 100 streams. The water prison formed by 100 streams could last up to 30 seconds. It wasn't possible to break it from the inside. It locked the movements of the target inside. In other words, if no one from the outside helped break you out, you would be stuck there for 30 seconds. Chen Guo was outside of the water prison, but the water prison couldn't be broken through that easily. By the time she broke the water prison, deception would already be gone. Should she fight with deception, while attacking the prison? Chen Guo began to sweat. She didn't have any confidence fighting deception, let alone attacking the prison at the same time. But in any case, she couldn't just sit there. Chen Guo fired towards deception. To stop an opponent from escaping, melee classes were better than long-ranged classes. Chen Guo wasn't as skilled as deception either and wasn't good at doing this sort of thing. She couldn't feel happy about this at all. I won't be able to block him, but what if I just make it so he can't run? Chen Guo's mind suddenly stirred. There was no time to think about it too carefully, so she immediately blurted out, "If you're smart, don't run." It doesn't matter. He won't be able to escape anyways. Deception wasn't the one to answer her. Chen Guo was slightly startled. A rainbow blur rushed towards deception. And at this moment, Chen Guo hadn't finished her attempt at trying to block deception. What? Chen Guo was confused. She turned her head to look. The water prison formed by the 100 streams was still there, but there was no one inside. Yi Shu had clearly escaped from the water prison's grasp. Right. That could happen. Chen Guo thought, but she was still confused. Why had she thought that Lord Grimm had certainly been captured by the water prison? Someone helped her ask this question. Impossible. She heard deception shout. What's impossible? Yi Shu replied. How did you know I would use 100 streams? Deception said. Chen Guo immediately understood. Why had she thought Yi Shu wouldn't be able to avoid the 100 streams? It was because the 100 streams had been done to near perfection. Deception clearly knew that his opponent was extremely experienced after using that flame cut. Even though the ninja's cast time was much faster than a mage's, if the hand seal was seen through, then it meant he would lose the initiative and the chances it would connect would be much lower. As a result, he chose the instant they split apart to complete 100 streams. During that entire time, Lord Grimm had been behind him, so there was no way he could have seen Deception's hand seal. And there weren't any sound effects either, so there was no way he could have figured out from listening. This type of situation had made Chen Guo think that the 100 streams would certainly connect, which was why she began to think ahead. But Lord Grimm had unexpectedly dodged the water prison. Deception obviously couldn't understand. As for Chen Guo, she quickly understood. Who was this? The glory textbook. God Yi Chu of hundreds of battles. Things that normal players couldn't do could be done by Yi Chu. Who cared if how fast you were? More importantly, your thoughts have been completely read by him. No matter how fast you were, if your opponent knew what you were going to do, then it didn't matter. Haha, your skill level isn't bad. I also used a bit of an unconventional method. Chen Guo heard Yi Shu explain. Unconventional method. Chen Guo wasn't sure. At this moment, Yi Shu had already begun fighting with Deception again. An unconventional method. What is it? Deception shouted. Yi Shu only replied with a smiley face. What was the unconventional method? Chen Guo was also curious, but seeing the two fight like that, she didn't dare ask. However, she began paying attention to see if there was anything unusual Yi Shu was doing. She quickly figured it out. F***CK. You're shameless. You're looking at my screen. Chen Guo jumped up. When it wasn't convenient for his Lord Grimm to catch what Deception was doing, Yi Shu would turn to look at Chen Guo's screen. He didn't look the slightest bit ashamed at his actions. Chapter 467, This is an Opportunity. Despicable. This time, Chen Guo really did look down on him. What textbook? What god? What idol? None of them could stop Chen Guo's disdain towards him. Peeking at someone else's screen. What shameful behavior. On an online platform, you might not have the chance to peek even if you wanted to, but they were in an internet cafe. In an internet cafe, this sort of behavior was common. Groups of friends would sit together to play Glory. As a result, they would shift their eyes around like little thieves. Every time Chen Guo saw this, she would always feel the same, dirty, extremely dirty. Chen Guo already felt dirty enough following a god to pick up scraps. Seeing how shameless he was being, Chen Guo almost couldn't bear it. In order to win, he wouldn't hold back anything. You really don't feel any shame? Chen Guo didn't care about bothering Yi Shu anymore and began shouting in his ears. Stop moving around randomly. You're blocking the screen. Yi Shu was still looking at Chen Guo's screen. Chen Guo swiped her mouse and turned her character's line of sight away. Shameless, shameless, Chen Guo continued to criticize him and asked Tang Ru, isn't he too shameless? Really? Tang Ru was actually doubtful. Chen Guo worried. Tang Ru was only a person. She had been too careless, letting her play with Yi Shu. Now she no longer had any sense of justice when watching Glory. How could she be so nonchalant over such shameless behavior? Isn't peeking at someone else's screen immoral? Chen Guo wanted to bring Tang Ru back onto the right path. But, you do it too, Tang Ru said. Ah, that's just everyone playing together. That's not related, Chen Guo laughed. Isn't he playing right now too? Tang Ru asked. Chen Guo was stumped. After thinking for a while, she realized that she had thought wrong. She had been replacing Yi Shu with the image of the idol she had in her mind. If others peeked at someone else's screen or even if she did it herself, she wouldn't feel bad. It was fine as long as they weren't using it as an advantage in a fight. But what about Yi Shu? She had always treated him as a perfect god. As a result, when Yi Shu acted in this way, she would immediately be unable to bear it. In other words, she cared even more about Yi Shu's image as a god than Yi Shu himself. Was she being too harsh? Chen Guo suddenly thought of celebrities from other areas. Common mistakes made by normal people would turn into huge news by the media if these celebrities did this type of mistake. Public figures seem to have been burdened with a strong sense of responsibility by society. Was acting like this because Yi Shu had been hiding behind the curtains the entire time? Was it because he didn't want to feel restricted from the spotlight being on him? Chen Guo thought as she quietly returned her camera angle back to where the two were fighting. Hey, Chen Guo called Yi Shu, telling him he could look. Thanks, Yi Shu replied and immediately turned his head to look. His nonchalant look as if he had done nothing wrong made Chen Guo angry. Show restraint. Patience. He's just playing the game. If we were in a guild war and I had this opportunity, I probably wouldn't let it go either. Chen Guo reminded herself. Your little trick is of no use. Chen Guo heard Deception speak and suddenly felt the urge to smash her computer on this guy's head. Your opponent's trick was of no use? What do you mean no use? It's not like you're looking at my screen. Why are you so happy that I'm restraining myself? Was this some sort of brilliant tactic? During this time, Deception rolled away. He threw the long string in his hand and Ninja Blade turned into a flying blade. The attack range grew longer and could be retracted as well. Lord Grimm stepped to the side. He moved up and brandished his sword. His mouse clicked on the Ninja Blade flying at him and blocked the attack. This was truly a brilliant move. If this was any other time, Chen Guo would have stars in her eyes, but now, she restrained herself from cheering. Using this opportunity, Deception once again pulled away from the conflict. Having stuck for this long, Deception was clear that pulling such a distance away from Lord Grimm wasn't an easy task. This was his chance to escape. Deception was just about to run, when a cold light flashed and Lord Grimm chased after him. However, Deception had already figured out the length of his opponent's weapon. His ninja blade had only been just enough to reach him, which meant that a sword wouldn't be able to hit him. Who would have thought that this sword light would actually flash in front of him? Deception looked carefully in surprise. His opponent had actually thrown his sword. Deception thought this was an accident. What type of attack was that supposed to be? His ninja blade had a string attached to it, so he could pull it back when he threw it. Normal weapons could be thrown too, but once you threw it, it was the same as discarding it. He would actually drop his own weapon in order to make such an attack? Deception couldn't understand, but he couldn't miss the opportunity. As a scrap picker, once he saw an item, it had to be picked up. This was the fundamental essence of the profession. Deception swung his blade and knocked it down. It was the same as what Yi Shu had done. He was ready to pick up the sword after it landed on the ground. But when he looked at his opponent's hands didn't stop and continued to charge at him. He had another thing in his hands. What is he trying to do? Deception was at a loss. His ninja blade had already knocked down the sword. At the same time, he heard a caw. The thing in his opponent's hands seemed to have picked up the sword. And then the sword didn't drop and continued to fly towards him. Deception couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the attack. It didn't do much damage to him though. Just as he was about to continue running away, he was suddenly launched into the air. He spun around in midair as his head crashed into the ground. Circle swing, Deception shouted in surprise. That's correct, Yi Shu said. You, what class are you? What's with your weapon? Deception could speak quickly too. I say, aren't you reacting a bit too slowly? Yi Shu was shocked. Deception checked Lord Grimm's character page, level 52? No class? Yi Shu was surprised. He thought his opponent had known about this long ago. There's no info on your weapon, this is a silver weapon, Deception was still shouting. Brother, do you not read the news? Yi Shu was lost in thought. He even stared blankly towards Chen Guo. Chen Guo's chasing haze wasn't far from them. She could obviously hear the two of them speaking. This Deception clearly didn't know who Lord Grimm was. What news? The guy even asked. Brother, it's been all over the place recently. I can't believe someone from Glory doesn't know. I'm very surprised, Yi Shu said. Chen Guo was speechless. This type of introduction must make the other person want to roll his eyes. Don't you feel embarrassed talking about yourself like that? It was the truth though. Who are you? Deception asked, when a bunch of shouts could suddenly be heard. Over there. So it turns out those two were partners. Don't let them run. Yi Shu quickly turned his viewpoint around to look. The troops from the three great guilds were charging towards them. He and Deception had been fighting with each other for too long. The three great guilds had been in chaos in the beginning, but as time went on, they finally realized that they had been set up by Lord Grimm into a pointless fight. Once they regained their composure, they asked their superiors for instructions on what to do. Their superiors slapped the table and cheered in response. Why hadn't the guilds acted against Lord Grimm yet? It was because his fame was too high right now. Chasing and killing him would attract too much attention. The club guilds cared about their image. If they were going to chase and kill someone, they needed a reason others could accept. They had to be especially careful for a public figure like Lord Grimm. But now, he had come out and killed two of their guild's captains and caused a huge fight to break out. This could be used a reason. In addition, Lord Grimm was seen to be together with Deception. Deception could be considered famous as well, an extremely infamous figure. Everyone who had their equipment stolen by him all wanted him dead. The top guilds had noticed him and had initially tried to pull him in. After all, they could all see that Deception was an expert. One of their missions as club guilds was to discover experts, rope them in, and then send them to the clubs. But this Deception seemed to never come out. His friends list was closed. Whenever they happened to bump into him, let alone negotiate, if he didn't steal your equipment, you got lucky. In the end, the club guilds tempered themselves and made preparations. Whenever there was an activity, they would guard against his scrap picking. Whenever there was a chance, they would try to get close with him. But up until now, it's said that anyone who has tried to get close to him has died. Of course, the top guilds wouldn't admit this. Letting this type of news spread was too shameful. Seeing Deception and Lord Grimm together, the core members of the top guilds seemed to have a sudden realization. They were a set. Lord Grimm had sowed discord. Deception had picked up the scraps. These two were working together. Kill. The three great guilds swarmed. Their numbers had even increased. They finally had the opportunity to chase and kill Lord Grimm. Moreover, this was also another opportunity. Because of Deception. After reporting this situation to their superiors, the top guilds immediately made a decision. Whether or not they really were together, they were to kill them both in one bite. Record the two of them together. The orders came down. Chapter 468, I Can't Stand Being Ignored. Hurry up and run, Yi Shu immediately warned Deception when he saw this scene. But when he turned to look, Deception had already run off. Where's your code of brotherhood? You didn't even tell me you were running off, Yi Shu ran while scolding him. When Deception heard this, his movements clearly slowed down for a second. What is that supposed to mean? I've been trying to run away the entire time. If it weren't for you, I'd have escaped a long time ago. Don't let them escape from combat. The guild players were experienced. Once they escaped from combat, they could simply log off. With today's technological progress, logging off was very quick. Don't count on the character sitting there waiting to die. If you were still in combat though and you force quit the game, your character would stay in-game to be killed. The order came down. The long-ranged classes fired a barrage of missiles. Even though not all of them hit, whether or not one was considered in battle didn't depend on how much damage one took. The system had its own way of deciding it. Yi Shu's Lord Grimm and Deception had been fighting for a while, so they were already in a combat status. Even if they wanted to log off, they wouldn't be able to. Seeing how careful and meticulous the guilds were being, it seemed like they would need to give up their hands and legs in order to escape. Chen Guo was nervous as well. Hearing Yi Shu's warning, she immediately ran away too. But she quickly remembered that she wasn't in combat. Those guilds were only focused on Lord Grimm and Deception. She was being regarded as a passerby. Chen Guo was furious. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, she directly let out a powerful skill. The three great guilds were too tunneled onto Lord Grimm and Deception. They were busy attacking and recording. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared before their eyes. The experienced players were overwhelmed with shock. They looked up and looked. Sure enough, it was the launcher's satellite beam about to crash down onto them. The satellite beam shot down. The wind from the shockwave blew across the surrounding characters' equipment. Those who were enveloped by the light naturally took a huge blow from the satellite beam. Chen Guo continued and the large beam split into several smaller pillars. The players didn't dare be slow. They scattered away and their formation went into a mess. Chen Guo had taken her revenge and was delighted. Following afterwards, Yi Shu helplessly said, "You're still playing? Why aren't you running?" Chen Guo could reactivate the skill one more time. But with the skill already raining down on them, how could the guild players not notice her? All sorts of attacks were being thrown at her. Yi Shu's warning was just done as an act of kindness. In this situation, with Chen Guo's skill level, she was basically a sheep throwing herself into a pack of wolves. Chasing Haze wasn't even able to take 2 steps, when the barrage of attacks crashed down on her, turning her into a corpse. "You really died like that," Yi Shu criticized. "HMPH, I wanted to do that." Chen Guo spoke like that, but her first reaction was to check her inventory. She would certainly lose experience and money, but importantly was her equipment. F***ck, Chen Guo erupted. She had lost 2 pieces of equipment. Her hands were empty, indicating that her weapon had dropped. Weapons were valued the most by players. Whenever anyone invested money into equipment, their first choice would be to invest in a weapon. However, the system considered the chances to drop the weapon as any other piece of equipment. Not only did Chen Guo drop 2 pieces of equipment, she had even dropped her weapon. Her luck was too tragic. Tisk 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 tisk, Yi Shu shook his head repeatedly. As if I care. It felt good doing that. Seeing the look on Yishu's face, Chen Guo continued to speak bravely. But this time, these words really were just words. Her decision to use satellite beam was completely done on impulse. It hadn't been a decision based on rational thinking. Afterwards, not a single person was close to dying, while she herself was killed. Being killed would have been fine if not for her level 70 purple rose flower cannon dropping. Chen Guo really wanted to cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Yishu actually consulted her using this saying. Who wants to cry? Chen Guo continued to speak bravely, but her actual emotions had already been sold out. The current Chen Guo was so sad she had even forgotten to revive as she stared at her corpse. Her equipment had already been stolen away. It's just a rose flower cannon. Though, Yishu was just about to analyze the equipment's value in order to comfort Chen Guo's anguish, but when he turned his head to look at her, he immediately stopped. From his perspective, a rose flower cannon was nothing. But for a normal player, any level 70 purple weapon wasn't easy to come by. Purple lettering meant the equipment was very rare. Level 70 was also the max level. Very few of these would become outdated, so even level 70 blue equipment were valuable. For a core member of a top guild, a level 70 purple equipment might not be much. This was because they had the guild's resources to pull from. A 10,000 player guild had who knew how many parties that could be formed. The chances that one of these parties would get an equipment was very high and the core members would have priority over these equipment. Normal players had it a lot more difficult. It required them to grind a certain dungeon many times. Even if the equipment dropped, it might not fall into their bags. They could be bought on the market, but with how rare these equipment were, the market prices wouldn't be low. If Chen Guo really wanted to, it wouldn't be difficult for her to buy a purple equipment with some money. But Yishu had been with her for 2 months and knew that Boss Chen was very proper. She would never use real money in the game. For this type of player, a purple weapon was a huge loss and was enough to make one's heart ache. Her heart ached, but there was nothing she could do. This was because the Heavenly Domain had another different rule than normal servers. Heavenly Domain equipment couldn't be bound. If Heavenly Domain equipment could also be bound, everyone would bind their good equipment and there would be no reason to worry. If that was the case, how could scrap pickers exist? Any equipment obtained in normal servers could be bound though. However, these equipment were all considered low-quality goods in the Heavenly Domain. Apart from disassembling them for some equipment that had value, even scrap pickers didn't like picking them up. Seeing the bitter look on Chen Guo's face, Yishu didn't look down on Chen Guo's loss. What else did you drop? Yishu asked. My head equipment also dropped, Chen Guo said. The head part didn't have to be a hat. It could also be a scarf or a mask or a hair accessory. There were even lollipops and cigarettes. Glory had all sorts of different types. Yishu also knew about the head equipment Chasing Haze dropped. It was a hairband. Chen Guo's Chasing Haze had a ponytail just like Chen Guo in real life. With this hairband gone, Chasing Haze's corpse had her hair scattered everywhere all over the ground. Yishu restrained himself from mocking her and nodded his head. Don't worry. You'll find another cannon and hairband. Chen Guo suddenly woke up from her anguish. What are you planning on doing? Chen Guo felt like something was about to happen. I'm about to go scrap picking, Yishu said. Lord Grimm stopped and turned around. You're crazy. Do you think you're some sort of... Chen Guo wasn't able to finish, when Lord Grimm turned back and began running away again. You, Chen Guo was at a loss. I was just looking back for a second to see if they had a lot of launchers among them or not, Yishu said. Why don't you take care of yourself first? There'll be more equipment in the future. It's nothing, Chen Guo said as she had Chasing Haze revive. Apart from the equipment, she also lost experience and money. After her experience dropped, don't look at how she was still level 70. In reality, her stats had been reduced. All of her equipment stats would be reduced as well. Not letting the player's level fall was to prevent players from taking advantage of it. It was done so that the player wouldn't be able to purposefully drop in level to finish level-restricted quests or dungeons. Reduce stats, while not reducing the level, was something that made the players furious. You worry about yourself. I'm about to pull off something huge. Yishu rolled up his sleeves as he spoke. How about you escape first before talking? Chen Guo looked at Yishu's screen. There were no longer just players chasing from behind, but players were blocking them from the front too. The guilds finally had an opportunity. A single team was enough to take down a wilderness escort, but to kill a boss like Yi Chu, the more players the better. Oh, excellent dynasty is good, Yi Shu said. What's good? Excellent dynasty will have more launchers, Yi Shu said. Chen Guo stared blankly. No need. It's better if you escape. It's just a rose flower cannon. I can easily buy it if I need to. But what will we do if your silver weapon drops? There's where you're wrong. To tell you the truth, there's no need to worry about a silver weapon dropping. Your equipment needs time to obtain, but a silver weapon. If I can make one, then I can make a second. Do you know how many of One Autumn Leaf's evil annihilations there are? Yi Shu said. I don't know. 3. Apart from the one Autumn Leaf has equipped, there are 2 others. These 2 are for research purposes. If one breaks, another one will be made to make up for it, Yi Shu said. Then with what you're saying, if silver weapons weren't valuable, they would be everywhere? Of course not, Yi Shu said. Some of the extremely rare materials restrict how many silver weapons there can be. But the one I have in my hands right now is only level 45. It hasn't reached that level yet. Plus, while I upgrade it to 70, who knows how many times I'm going to break one, so don't worry. This is still incomplete. Oh. Then again, I should still get to know the person who killed me, Yi Shu said. Let's just hope it's not so many that you won't be able to remember them all, Chen Guo said. Ha ha ha. Speaking of this, there's one such person in front of me. See that ninja bro? He's not very focused when he's running. He's always peeking at me. I think he really wants my silver weapon, Yi Shu said. Chapter 469 A Way Out. Yi Shu's tone of voice wasn't polite at all and he spoke loudly too. Chen Guo heard it. Deception must have heard it too. Deception had nothing to say after being seen through. He simply made a humph. I say, where are you running? Yi Shu asked. The two had been running for a while. Yi Shu had been following behind Deception the entire time, but he was unable to see through this guy's intentions. How much of a burden are you carrying? Unable to get Deception to reveal his intentions, Yi Shu switched topics. Deception continued to stay silent and do his own thing. Suddenly, he heard a gunshot from behind him. It was coming from somewhere very close too. Deception was someone who had been doing this for a while and had some skill in judging distance from the surrounding sounds. He immediately rolled. When he turned back to look who had shot it, he saw Lord Grimm with his gun pointing straight at him. What are you doing? Deception was furious. I thought you couldn't hear me, Yi Shu said. Deception really wanted to kill him, but it wasn't the right time to do so. The troops chasing after them had started to close in. The gunners were all firing rapidly at them. One group from the front had also arrived. The situation was looking quite grim. Deception didn't plan on wasting time on Yi Shu. After moving forward a few steps, he switched directions and leapt onto a rooftop. Bro, isn't your plan a bit too low-leveled? Aren't you afraid of an ambush? This time, Yi Shu didn't follow him. Lord Grimm stood on the street and asked Deception. Deception didn't reply. He jumped up and swung his ninja blade at the wall. Crouching down, he used the blade in order to jump again. Attack your enemies when they're halfway across the river. Have you ever heard of this saying? Yi Shu was still talking and Deception was still ignoring him. This theory applies to climbing walls too, Yi Shu continued. Deception still wanted to ignore him, but suddenly, he saw a flash of light from the corner of his eyes and immediately knew something wasn't right. He didn't dare continue climbing up. He rolled backwards and watched as a satellite beam descended from the sky, right where Deception had just been. The stream of air caused by the satellite beam made Deception roll farther than normal. When he landed on the ground, he used a quick recover to steady himself. Although the attack hadn't hit him, he had still suffered from some of its effects. If he wasn't so skilled, he would be lying on the ground right now. Not bad, Yi Shu praised. The several smaller pillars after the main satellite beam began heading towards him, but he was able to easily dodge them and escape. Where are you going to jump next? Yi Shu dodged, while asking Deception. If you've got any suggestions, hurry up and say it. Deception was annoyed. After the satellite beam, he could see that there were people standing on the roof. Even though there weren't many of them, a certain level of skill was necessary to get up onto the roof in the first place. These few players were more than enough to take him down. Deception swept the surroundings. The escape routes he had already had enemies guarding them. Deception was somewhat sad. This wasn't his first time scrap picking, and he had more fruitful pickings before. He had never seen such a huge operation either. Why was it like this today? Had he picked up something extremely valuable? Deception had swift eyes and hands. He had already seen what equipment he had picked up, but he didn't remember anything too special. Seeing all of these pursuers, he was starting to doubt himself. He couldn't help but look at his inventory again. However, there really was nothing that shocking. There are escape routes everywhere. It just depends on whether or not you have the ability to go through them, Yi Shu said. Can you stop with your bullshit? Deception was worried. The two groups on the side were defending their place, and their routes in front and behind were blocked. They were trapped. I'll show you how to do it, Yi Shu said. Right as the satellite beam finished, his character charged forward towards Deception's previous escape route. Deception was startled, but he didn't have any time to think too much and followed after him. Lord Grimm didn't wait to get near the wall before he jumped. The players on the roof weren't just going to sit there and watch. They sent out their attacks at him. Lord Grimm opened up his myriad manifestation umbrella above him. Ka. It began spinning with the mechanic skill, rotor wing. He even made some drifts while in the air to dodge the attacks. Deception was sad. What type of demonstration was that? He just flew up there with a rotor blade. I'm a ninja. How am I supposed to use a rotor blade? Deception didn't have any other choice though. He jumped up again and used the ninja blade to climb. An elementalist on the roof flicked his sleeves and his staff pointed towards him. Deception was about to jump away to dodge, when he heard several shots of gunfire. Blood splashed out from the elementalist as he stumbled, unable to finish casting his magic. Deception was delighted. He quickly climbed up. He turned to look at Lord Grimm. But the scene in front of him was something he never would have imagined. Lord Grimm had used rotor wing to fly up, but he wasn't able to find any opportunity to land. Rotor wing skill was at the end of its duration too. The guy had used a Gatling gun in order to help Deception out, while using the bullet's recoil to slide in the air. After interrupting the elementalist's casting, the bullet swept across the other players and they lost their balance. However, the recoil from the firing caused Lord Grimm to move away from the rooftop. In any case, this was a huge opportunity for Deception to break through. Deception was very confused. Seeing Lord Grimm move farther and farther away, he doubted Lord Grimm would sacrifice himself to save him. What are you hiding for? It's not like you'll die, someone suddenly roared. This person clearly saw that they weren't blocking well enough and warned them not to care about the opponent's damage and make sure they didn't land on the rooftop. The guards on the rooftop suddenly woke up. It was just that dodging when you were attacked was a habit already. The better the expert, the more it was like so. They were heavenly domain players as well as part of the top guilds, so they obviously had this sort of habit. As a result, once Deception finished his jump, he took out his blade and wanted to beat them away, while he was on the rooftop. However, the launcher completely ignored Deception's attack. He took out his hand cannon and used the low-leveled launcher skill swing to trade blows with Deception. It didn't matter if he took a lot of damage for doing this as long as he was able to send Deception back down. Not good. Deception could tell the situation wasn't looking good, but it was too late to change attacks. He could only pray his luck was good today. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a sword slicing through the wind. A silver light came crashing down in front of him. Lord Grimm had used Falling Light Blade. Join my party. Deception heard him yell as a party invite popped up. Without hesitating, Deception immediately clicked accept. He prayed he wasn't too slow. He knew that this falling light blade could resolve their current situation. However, if he didn't accept Lord Grim's party invite and the damage wasn't negated, this falling light blade would send him flying too. He would fall back onto the streets. Did I succeed? In that split second, Deception wasn't sure if he had accepted the invite faster or if Lord Grim's sword had arrived first. He saw the sword hit the ground. The shock wave from the falling light blade immediately spread outwards. That launcher was the first to be hit by it and fell tumbling to the ground. He immediately used a quick recover. Although he didn't get knocked down, he lost the opportunity to block them. And Deception? Deception was standing firmly on the rooftop. He had joined the party before the falling light blade hit. "You're pretty quick," Deception heard Lord Grim say. After using a falling light blade, Lord Grim did a roll and then immediately went after the launcher. Deception suddenly realized something. Just before, that guy had used Gatling gun and was pushed away from the roof. How did he get here so quickly? Deception turned his head to look and saw another Lord Grim behind him, falling to the ground. Shadow clone technique. Deception was a ninja, so he obviously recognized this skill. Lord Grim used Shadow clone technique to instantly move close and then used a falling light blade to quickly fall onto the rooftop. While doing this, he also sent over a party invite. Deception wasn't a noob. He was very clear how difficult it was to pull off such a string of inputs. There are escape routes everywhere. It just depends on whether or not you have the ability to go through them. Deception suddenly thought of Lord Grim's words. It could be said that he could do all this because of his access to skills from different classes. However, by looking at what he had accomplished with those moves, forcing his character to stay in midair for a long time wasn't something any normal player could achieve either. Who is this guy? Deception wondered, when he heard him shout, "If you just stand there, you'll die. Hurry and help me." Deception hastily moved away. Sure enough, someone was already heading to his location and attacking him. Deception was surprised. To think he would get distracted at such a critical moment. When he looked ahead, he saw Lord Grim sticking close to the launcher, who could do nothing to fight back. "What are you doing?" Deception couldn't understand his actions. Why wasn't he trying to escape? Why was he fighting with the launcher? "I'm going to pick up scraps." After saying this, Lord Grim sent out a striker's front kick and kicked the launcher down from the rooftop. Following afterwards, he went down and struck the finishing blow. Chapter 470, Scrap Picking and Playing with Lives. Deception was stunned. If he hadn't heard the sound of an attacking coming at him, he would have probably frozen in place. What was their current situation? There were enemies on all four sides. It might even be too late to run away, and yet this guy still wanted to pick up scraps? The problem was that this guy said he was going scrap picking, but his actions didn't seem like scrap picking at all. What was scrap picking? Taking advantage of a chaotic situation to pick up dropped equipment. This was scrap picking. Deception taking the initiative to attack targets was already considered beyond scrap picking. But this Lord Grim directly grabbed a full health character to kill him and then pick up his scraps. Was that even called scrap picking? It was more like stealing. Deception cursed silently. But when he looked left and right, he discovered Lord Grim that Lord Grim kicking down the launcher might be the only way to escape. This escape route required the launcher to be knocked down. Thinking of this, Deception immediately felt like his motive to pick up scraps was simply done in the passing. His real intention was to kill off the launcher to create an escape path. Deception thought about this as he rushed past this breakthrough and leapt down. When he looked down towards the streets, he immediately turned to stone. Below, Lord Grim really was trying to kill that launcher. The launcher wasn't an obstacle anymore to them. Once you hit him down, why would you waste your time killing him? Was he really going to go scrap picking? Deception felt like there had to be some sort of scheme around this. Before he landed, he checked the launcher's equipment. A character from a top guild wouldn't have bad equipment, but that was only relative to normal players. Even though Deception didn't have such a mountain to rely on, but he was able to prosper quite well through his scrap-picking business. The equipment from these ordinary guild members weren't good enough to make him drool. When Deception landed on the ground, the launcher's equipment had already been thoroughly checked 2 times. However, with his 2 experienced eyes, he didn't see anything very valuable on the launcher's body. Hurry up and help me. You'll profit too. Right when he was puzzled about the situation, Lord Grimm suddenly interrupted his thoughts. Could it be in his inventory? Deception suddenly reacted. He could only check the equipment being worn on the launcher, but he couldn't see what was in his inventory. The items in his inventory also had the same chance of dropping. Because of this, Deception didn't hesitate and brandished his ninja blade. Yi Shu completely crushed this launcher. The various skills being used made the opponent's head dizzy. It didn't matter that his damage output was extremely low. Lord Grimm's level was low and his equipment was low level too. Against a level 70 character, the damage done would be very low. Under this sort of scenario, Yi Shu might have the advantage in skill, but he could only kill him in so much time. However, Deception was different. He started with 2 high-leveled ninja skills, coordinating with Yi Shu's combo. Not bad. Be careful above you, Yi Shu praised and reminded him. Deception lifted his head up and saw the players, who used to just be guarding the rooftops, come jumping down. Deception was worried. He felt like still trying to kill someone in this situation was a bit crazy. But the items dropped by this guy must be very valuable, right? Thinking of this, Deception couldn't bear to just leave, but how was he going to deal with all of these dumplings? Faster, Deception heard Lord Grimm shout. Then, he saw him rush forward and send out a falling flower palm towards a player on the left. This player turned into a cannonball, crashing into 2 others. Afterwards, he turned around and fired an anti-tank missile. The players on the right side were just about to land on the ground, but instead, they landed on the missile and immediately went flying away. Just like this, using a melee skill and a long-range skill, he used the descending players as toys. These players were unable to dodge in the air. Not a single one of them were able to close in on them and were all sent far away. Those who failed their quick recover rolled about on the ground. You still haven't killed him yet, Yi Shu had returned and immediately criticized Deception for still fighting with the launcher. Deception was also somewhat sad. He had come out to pick up scraps, so he wasn't wearing very good equipment. As a result, his damage output wasn't very high either. Hearing Yi Shu complain, he suddenly remembered that he could use the equipment he had picked up. Thinking of this, he quickly found equipment that would increase his damage output and wore them. His damage output immediately increased greatly. Yes, good. Yi Shu watched the launcher's health drop and expressed that he was satisfied. Deception was already completely focused on the task though. When this launcher died, his items would drop out in an instant. Deception was confident that with his ability as a scrap picker, he would be the first to pick up the items. At the very least, he didn't believe the other side, when he said, "You'll profit too." Hurry. They're about to surround us. Lord Grimm hurried over to help, complaining while attacking. Sending the dumplings flying away would only buy them a few seconds of time. All of them quickly got up and charged forward at them again. Yi Shu had no way to send them all flying again. The 2 were truly in a difficult situation. They hastily tried to kill off the launcher, while dodging the incoming enemy's attacks. A forest of spears and a rain of arrows descended onto them. The 2 skipped about like 2 little monkeys. They were about to be surrounded, but the launcher was at critical health. Just a bit more and he would die. The chasing guild players didn't know the truth behind why Yi Shu and Deception were fighting with the launcher. They just thought he was being a brave hero and sacrificing himself in order to stall for time. Everyone felt very moved and couldn't bear to watch the launcher actually dying. Cleric! Everyone in the group shouted. In this sort of many against few scenario, clerics tended to follow a bit behind everyone else. Hearing an urgent call, a cleric appeared. Seeing the situation, he knew what to do and rushed forward to heal the launcher. Bang! But then there was an explosion and the explosion blasted the cleric flying away. There was even a knife stuck in his forehead. Cleric, heal yourself, Yi Shu said in a low voice. Troublemaker. You're looking to die. Deception held his knife-tossing position. The 2 characters turned back and made the decisive blow. Pooh! Deception's ninja blade swung down. Lord Grim's spear thrust forward. Both hit at the same time and blood spurted out from the launcher's body. The launcher fell and with a wah, equipment jumped out from his body. Deception immediately focused and his mouse moved so fast, even he didn't know where he was pointing at when he picked them all up. I got them. Deception was excited. He delightedly turned to look at Lord Grim, when he realized he was suddenly gone. Are you waiting to die? Lord Grim's voice unexpectedly came out. Deception immediately turned to look and saw that he was already 5 units away. How could he be so fast? Unless he didn't pick up any equipment? Deception was surprised and opened up his inventory. Earlier, he had only cared about picking them up and didn't check to see what he had gotten. When Deception saw what he had gotten, he immediately felt disappointed. A pair of shoes dropped. It wasn't bad, but it was far from what Deception was expecting. It wasn't anything worth dying for. Could he not have even tried? Deception thought and turned around to look. The launcher's corpse was still there. Deception took note of his name. Over here. Deception was still thinking about equipment, when a voice suddenly came. Another group of players were in front of them and had blocked their path. Deception didn't think and immediately turned his body to jump towards a wall. Before, that street had people guarding the rooftops. But here, they shouldn't have had enough time to make any arrangements yet, right? Deception doubted they would have made preparations for the entire town. But when he looked, he saw a greatsword smashing towards him. Deception reacted extremely quickly and raised his ninja blade. This wasn't a blade master's guard. The system didn't help out in any way. It was entirely the player. It could be said that this was technically an attack, but the target wasn't the opponent, but rather the opponent's sword. This sort of attack could be considered a guard. If it was successful, the opponent's damage and knockback could be reduced. Guarding in this way was even more difficult than attacking. After all, if an attack missed, it wouldn't matter much, but if a guard missed, then the player would take the full brunt of the hit. But in this situation, Deception didn't have any other choice but to guard. His mouse moved and his ninja blade went out in a swift arc, hitting the greatsword. Dong! Deception wasn't hit by the greatsword, but he couldn't jump onto the roof either. Because of this attack, he had to land back onto the street. I say, is your memory that bad? Lord Grim's voice floated over. Deception was startled. Could there be people here too? Just how big of a net had these guilds constructed? Don't only think about the roofs. Over here, Lord Grim called. He moved into an empty room. Without stopping, he directly went through a building and jumped out from a window. Deception rushed forward and was just about to jump out through the window, when he saw a shadow leap into the building. Deception hastily raised his blade, but he quickly recognized the name on top of the shadow, Lord Grim. Ha ha ha, there's even more people over there. Lord Grim laughed, but the news he gave wasn't anything to laugh about.